When Guardians of the Galaxy first came out, it was a surprise hit, even by Marvel standards. The movie that everyone joked proved Marvel could sell anybody on anything. I mean, if people can fall in love with a movie with a living tree and a talking raccoon, anything was possible. And really, the praise was earned. In a cinematic universe that everyone claims is formulaic, both fairly and unfairly, Guardians really had a new sense of freshness about it. Tapping the director of Slither and Super, James Gunn, was an idea that paid off. Combining the stylings of superheroes and space opera, Guardians pretty much was the Star Wars of this generation. Of course, until Episode 7 came out and by definition became this generation of Star Wars. Combining humor, action, and instantly likable despite being criminal characters, Guardians instantly became a favorite. And as much as I loved the first one and was nothing but excited for Volume 2, I still wasn't exactly sure what to expect from the sequel. Direct sequels in the MCU are a bit of a mixed bag. Individual opinion will vary, of course. Personally, I haven't watched a Marvel movie that I can say that I didn't like, but there are varying levels of quality, with most sequels being as good as the first incarnation. I like Thor the Dark World, even though I don't think anyone would call the Thor movies their favorites. I really liked Iron Man 3, yes, even the Mandarin, and I thought the twist was genius. Avengers Age of Ultron also has a mixed opinion on whether or not it was as good as the first one, which I thought it was. Civil War fits in a weird position where it's a sequel to Age of Ultron and Winter Soldier, and was also pretty great. The only real exception to these was Iron Man 2, which wasn't as good as Iron Man, and Winter Soldier, which completely blew the first one out of the water. I really loved that movie. So with all these in mind, where exactly does Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 fall in comparison to the first one? Volume 2 kicks off with the Guardians defending some kind of battery in a musical opening of Baby Groot dancing to Mr. Blue Sky, and I couldn't think of a better way to start off. Eventually, the plot moves to the Guardians meeting Star-Lord's dads and shenanigans ensue. What I was surprised by is that Volume 2 decided to get more personal and intimate than the first one. Yes, there's your typical bigger and better sequelitis in store, including big action set pieces such as Yondu and Rocket massacring what is probably hundreds of people while Come a Little Bit Closer plays in the background. Just as classy as you remember. The movie moves at an excellent pace, with James Gunn knowing when to get big and loud, when to be soft and quiet, and when to use humor to cut the tension in a scene. There's a huge focus on character relationships, as the movie explores more of its characters' feelings, emotions, and weaknesses. The theme of family runs throughout the whole film and makes you connect more to the movie than I was expecting. What is family? The people biologically related to you, or the friends you gather in life? What exactly is a father figure? Do we realize how important the friends and family around us are, or do we only come to this realization after they're gone? All these things make Guardians more than just a standard action movie. The newest additions to the Guardians, officially or unofficially, are Mantis, with Yondu and Nebula returning as temporary members. Mantis is a solid addition to the team, with a childlike naivety and interesting interactions with Drax. Meanwhile, Star-Lord, Gamora, Rocket, Groot, and Drax obviously return with the aforementioned added depth to them. And yes, Baby Groot is an instant favorite. Each character, both old and new, is given their own little moments in character growth. Really, it's impressive how much they're able to cram into this little gem. And of course, I can't neglect to mention Kurt Russell as Ego, the Living Planet. The casting of Russell seems almost a match made in heaven. Not only could you totally see him as Star-Lord's dad, he also makes a great villain. While he probably won't surpass Loki in terms of best villains because people really like Loki, but in a franchise where villains are the constant weak spot, I would say Ego is a nice counter to that assumption. Being both bombastic and almost literally larger than life, while also causing real conflict amongst the group physically and to Star-Lord emotionally. There's also a group of, to quote Rocket, conceited douchebags called Sovereign who keep recurring in the plot but manage to be nothing but a nuisance and something to propel the plot forward. I found Volume 2 to be even funnier than the first one. While I was laughing throughout the first one, there were parts in Volume 2 where I almost couldn't stop. This was some of the most fun at the movies I've had in a while. While managing to be funnier, it was also more engaging and I couldn't help but almost cry at the end. The movie really gets you in the feels with its characters and themes. A new awesome mix full of classic and nostalgic tunes returns, and I liked it even more than the first awesome mix. The music even factors into the story more than the first one. The only real criticism I can perceivably level at Guardians of the Galaxy is it's not as fresh as the first one. But really, how is it supposed to be? To criticize a sequel for not being fresh is to pretty much just criticize it for being a sequel. The fact that it's the second means you can't fairly fault it for not being completely new or fresh. What Volume 2 does is expand on and continue the first one, and it does this job well. And as with all the movies in what is really still an experimental yet well-established cinematic universe, is world build with the other movies, which Volume 2 does mostly in the background with Easter eggs and references. Going more in depth with characters that were already established and posing new challenges conflicts to your protagonist is as good an approach to a sequel as any. And I can't help but stretch how a sequel deciding to go more personal and metaphorically smaller is admirable and not something most sequels attempt to do, and Volume 2 should be commended for that. While it's not perfect, as no movie and a sequel even more so is, or that it's fresh, but it is a surprisingly great sequel to an already loved movie and none of the flaws weighed it down for me. As with all sequels in the MCU, where your opinion lies will vary. I have already talked to people who thought Volume 2 was better, and some who thought the original was better. Regardless of critic opinion, most people will go to see this movie anyway as the superhero continues to dominate the blockbuster. I for one love pretty much every minute of it, even if it can't quite repeat the surprise of the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Do I really need to say more? 4 out of 5 stars, of course you should check it out.